I would say within a minute of hearing about Witches of the Revolution, I was excited about it and interested in it. And here you can see it's a cooperative deck building game by M. Craig Stockwell, and it is published by Atlas Games. It's indicated 1 to 4 and 30 to 60 minutes. That seems about accurate based on the plays that I've done. I've played it both using the solo rules, which basically amount to a larger hand size, and I've also played it using 2 different covens, which is what you're playing here. You're playing a coven of witches that is mustering their energy and their impact and their skills to help in the revolution. I think it plays best for the solo player playing 2 hands, because there's a lot of cooperative card action and building in the opportunity to help your other side, even if the other side is you, is a level of challenge that is adds a lot to the game. But it is definitely playable and designed pretty much just as much to be played by one person with a slightly larger hand size. The game gets to the table pretty quickly, and the goal of the game is to overcome 4 obstacles that you will be placing out of randomly from the 16 obstacles available to you, and you will be using your own deck of cards, which is your own coven of witches that you're going to be continually building up by recruiting cards to it, to gather together the magical resources that are necessary in order to overcome the obstacles. Along the way, you will be dealing with various events that come up that you need to overcome in order to progress. So, for example, let's take a look at one of the obstacles. This is, we need to rescue the Naiad of the Delaware River. We have a description of the event or the obstacle that it is, and then an indication here of what is needed to overcome it. These icons match up with the 6 different types of magic that exist among these witches. And let's see, this is magic of the familiars, I guess, with that cat icon, and this is hexes magic, I guess a spell or something that's cast directly. So we need to get 4 hexes and 2 cat icons in order to successfully overcome this, and I'll show you how you do that. And we'll just take a look at one other one here. This is to repair the cairn at Chestnut Hill. Now, these are basically unaligned types of magic or power. So this represents catastrophe, and this represents just general unaligned events. So sorry about that. I need to remind myself what they called it. So you can use, but you still have to match up these icons. Well, what are you doing to do that? We would be putting 4 out this way, making sure that we are covering all the different types of magic, and again, lining up our necessary resources that we will have to pull off in order to clear this line, in order to clear the obstacle. What you're doing, how you're doing this, is you're beginning the game with your Coven of Witches. This is 15 cards that are known as Seeker cards, and these are basic cards that have each, in this case, lady offers a different type of magic. So she offers hexes and channeling. No, that's not channeling. That is rituals. So she offers hexes and rituals, and this member of the coven offers channeling, and she has the familiar icon here. The familiar and the channeling, etc. Let me show you. I didn't show you all of them. Here we go. This one here is enchanting. So what you are doing is you are mixing and matching these icons together to overcome various events that get pulled in. That, for example, here is an event. In order to solve this event, you would need to come up with either, this line is in either, not both, either 4 of the channeling icon, or in this case 4 of the enchanting icon, in order to clear this event. It also says here, this event requires 1 extra icon per completed objective. This is one of the more difficult ones. I'll say this game is tough. I've lost way more than I've won. This little mark here, which is meant to be a blood mark at the bottom, is an indication of a slightly harder event that they suggest for an easier game or your initial games you remove from the event stack. And here we can see by comparison there is none of that blood splotch there. This is a different event here, which would require 3 of this icon or 3 of this icon to overcome. Although this also says it requires 1 extra icon per event to its left in the line. Well, what does that mean? Let's take a look at a part of the board that I did not show you, which is the event lines. So what's happening is, as you are progressing through the game, you have your stack of events here, and you are at each turn pulling in an event. If you do not resolve that event in your turn, you are sliding it down. As you slide the events down, a number of things can happen, none of them really very good. You will be initially having effects like adding +1 to your tyranny track, which I'll talk about in a minute. You'll have to banish something, recruit. That is a possibility to take for your hand. More tyranny happens, more banishing, more tyranny, etc., until you get toward the end here where it is going to tell you that you are, if the events are sliding down and you're letting them become unresolved all the way up to here, eventually you will just be losing depending on how many players you are playing. That's one way to lose. The other thing that happens as the events progress, and if they're unresolved, is you will start to move into spaces with these icons. If and when you have an event, say this Liberty Bell icon, when the Liberty Bell icon moves into the mark with a Liberty Bell, if that matches up, you are also having a negative effect on the Liberty track. And the Liberty track is here down the side of the board. You can see the start marker. I lost my Liberty marker on the floor, but you start here and you're going to be moving up and down this track during the course of the game, and you can see that there are some positive or there's some negative effects that come into play. So if you are getting too close and again down all the way to high tyranny, you will lose the game. So this is another way that the game keeps you on track to deal with the events that come in. And then finally, this is the moon track. The moon track is yet another way that is going to impact you. You start here, and the moon track has modifiers that will add on to the costs for resolving events. So the more you travel up the moon track, the harder it's going to be. So there is a great incentive in the game not to hang on and build up your resources, but rather to expend your resources to, as quickly as possible, deal with the events as they are coming in and moving through. You're going to be adding an event every time that you pull from the, what is this called here, the recruit deck, unless you happen to pull in what's known as a blessing. When you set this deck up, you are going to be seeding it with, I believe there are 4, maybe more, I'll have to check and put that up, blessings in the deck, and basically they have you do it so they're sort of relatively spread out through the deck. A blessing will allow you to do some free recruiting. It will also allow you not to pull in an action that turn, but short of that, you're pulling in actions, and this is an example of the types of cards that you could potentially be recruiting. And this is one of the more clever things about the game. Well, there's a lot of clever things about the game mechanics, I think, but this is one of them. So you're paying for this card to get a specific set of symbols with really basically any card, as long as you have those 2 icons. So, for example, in this case, you could be paying for this card using a card that gets rid of these symbols. It doesn't really matter. And this is where you need to manage, you're trading icons to some extent, and you need to manage what you're trading versus a couple of things. What you think you're going to need to get these events in, and you're going to be having an event coming in before you do this trade. You're also, again, ultimately going to be looking to see what you need to resolve these obstacles, because in the end, that's what you're trying to do. So when you resolve one of these obstacles, you then get to remove from this row of icons any one of the icons that is on this obstacle card. It doesn't have to be the one that you use to resolve it. So for example, if you resolve this event using using cards that totaled 3 star icons, you could trade in this event still for 1 hand icon. It doesn't have to match up. And then you're going to be removing the relevant icon from up here until, again, you remove whatever is the qualifying cost of this. So in, again, this case, that would be 3 of each, and then that event would be resolved. So everything that you're doing in this game, and part of the reason why probably I play so poorly, because I'm just not a great planner or looker ahead in this way, everything you're doing is like with consideration potentially for what you need moving forward. To recruit, again, the other thing that will help you is if one of your recruit cards is in this column here, the cost of recruiting it, well, this is a relic, so it comes in for free, actually, but the cost of recruiting it is reduced by 1. And if it is in this middle line here, it is reduced by 1 if you match up a magic icon. So in this case, for example, you need 2 of these stars to recruit it. If one of them is you use with a star, for example, with this type of star, or with a pot like that, it would cost you only 1 to recruit, 1 card to recruit, or I should say 1 star to recruit. So again, decisions to be made about how you're going to use your resources and also which icons you are trading for, which is all going to be tied into the icons that are here on the event track that you know you need to use to overcome, to get the little chits that you will then be using and to pull off to obtain your objectives. Unlike other deck builders, you are really trying to avoid, as much as possible, shuffling your deck of cards. And the reason why is because of this moon track here. And you can see that the moon track is starting on 0, and then the numbers add up +1, +1, +1, and it ultimately moves up to +2, +3, and +4. Every time you shuffle your deck of cards, your draw deck, you have to move this moon 1 up, and it's going to increase the recruiting costs of cards, and this represents the waning power of your coven as time is passing and as the evening goes toward daylight. So that's a pretty clever mechanic. And then that tyranny track that we saw on the other side, or the liberty track I should say, shows how much liberty the colonists are getting or how much tyranny is happening, and it's going to be moving up and down depending on if you resolve an event that has a liberty bell, it's going to move toward tyranny, and if you are doing if you leave unresolved some event that moves into the liberty is being taken away, and so the track is moving down, and if you solve an event that has a liberty icon on it, the track is moving up, and then there are the effects that I already showed you. So these are some ways, again, of modulating or causing restrictions on what happens. This is a tough game to think about and talk about, because the idea behind it, the concepts of the witches helping the colonials and this kind of thing is so unique. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, as soon as I heard it, I was like, I've got to get this game. But and even the event cards here, if you look at them and read them, somebody's torturing the innocents, there's a hysterical mob hang suspected witches, prison ship, liberation, troop reinforcement, shipwrecked. Thinking about these concepts is also terrific. The difficulty is, and then of course there's the magic. There's the rituals and hexes and familiars and brewing, channeling magic, all of this kind of stuff. At least for somebody like me, if you follow my channel, you know pretty much in any game I'm playing, I'm drawn to some aspect of magic within the game, even if it's not necessarily a game where that's the biggest
thing. Yet here, really what it boils down to is just the mechanics, and it is really very much a matter of, I've got these red and I need to, get so many of them, and which card do I discard to get more red, and by when will I need them? And that's not a bad thing. And as I was showing in the way that the game works, what's really cool about it is that it's not just linear. There's not just one thing that you need to get rid of to get something else, to get something else. Everything is interconnected. You've got the moon track here that is going to be impacted by how much you shuffle. And of course, the shuffling has to do with hand management and how many cards you're going to use to get something. And you may decide you really want something because the events are moving down and you need to resolve them before they move down this track, because as the track goes, some bad things can happen. And then, of course, you're also considering the management of this Liberty and Tyranny track. All of this is extremely clever, I think, and very tightly designed in a game that's easy to get to the table and can play pretty quickly when you go through it. And it was the kind of game when I finished one game and lost, as I usually did, I felt like, all right, let me just do this one more time. And I put out 4 different objectives and I sort of started over. Again, the problem was I realized that I could have been playing this exact game either with blank cards, everything blank except the iconography, or it could have been a space game. I was thinking a little bit of Race for the Galaxy, although I can't remember whether I actually mentioned this earlier or just thought it to myself. I mean, in that game, I know that game sort of has a similar critique about it to some extent by some people. For me, I'm able to sort of maintain the theme more even as I am just manipulating those icons. But here, it could have been space theme. It could have been some sort of horror theme, like I'm thinking another type of horror theme like Cthulhu or vampires or whatever. Or it could have been this, which is a really clever idea. But the way the mechanics are and the way the game works, the mechanics come to the fore. And so that's just something to be aware of if you are thinking about the game. Those mechanics, as for a solo player, is really involving, and to spend 30 to 40 minutes sort of manipulating your cards and trying to figure out, and the tension of are you getting to the end, is the tyranny rising, are the events just escalating so much so that you're losing control. That's actually there, at least for me it was, the kind of tension of the game acceleration, and that often, especially in a solo game, can be something that sometimes feels artificial. Here it feels very built into the game mechanics, and I think that's a good thing. But as I said, in terms of really feeling like I was the manager of this coven of witches and marshaling nature's forces to help the rebels create the Union, that did not happen for me when I was playing it. As always, thanks for watching.